Welcome to RAADcast, where science and soul converge in shaping the future of human potential. I'm your host, Dr. Melissa Grill-Peterson, and together we're stepping beyond limits to explore super longevity. Produced by the Coalition for Radical Life Extension, the visionaries behind RAADfest, RAADcast is more than a podcast. It's a movement for the bold, the curious, and those who refuse to settle for anything less than the extraordinary. Together, we'll uncover the cutting-edge science, unknown strategies, and transformative practices, paving the way for a future of limitless potential. If you're ready to think bigger, dream bolder, and live longer, you're in the right place. This is RAADcast. Now let's get ready to explore the future of life itself. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's episode. I am so honored and excited. We have a very special guest, Dr. Rafael Gonzales. He's a world-renowned expert in the field of regenerative medicine and stem cell therapy. He has over 20 years of pioneering research. He's been at the forefront using stem cells, exosomes, and immune-based therapeutics to really push the boundaries of health, healing, and longevity. Now, today, we're going to go deep into the science, where it's at, where it's headed, and we're going to explore the role of stem cells in healing, repair, and our favorite topic, radical life extension. Dr. Gonzales, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here, honored to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to educate. Love what I do, and I love what I'm actually seeing. We were just recently at this, we just spoke about it, the American Academy for Anti-Aging, the Longevity Fest, which was like amazing, beyond chaotic, and so many new things on the horizon. It's really exciting time to be in this field. It's very
It
exciting.
really is. It was the largest year of that conference. And you know what's so phenomenal? I'm sure it's got to be exciting for you to kind of see this inflection point because you were the early adopter. I mean, you've been out there leading the charge for over 20 years. And to see this pinnacle moment of so many healthcare practitioners from so many different disciplines coming to the conversation now, coming to the table, wanting to wrap their heads and hearts around it to go take it back into their communities. Tell me what that's like for you.
It's enlightening, and it's honorable and pleasurable because it was a long-term battle with teaching these courses to start off with at the American Academy for Anti-Aging over 10 years ago. As part of their taught many of the classes there in regenerative medicine, and now it's so well accepted. It's understood a lot more. There's a lot more education out there, and it's actually moving forward much quicker, which is what's really neat about this entire sector. It's an accepted, sector where if you look at, for instance, the government now, the FDA, they're on the verge of accepting the term longevity, the term anti-aging, where you have to specifically say we're going to study frailty, we're going to study older issues, neurodegenerative diseases, cardiovascular disease, where essentially all of them are age-associated diseases.
Correct. Yeah. And the biggest thing that we forget is we begin to age the moment we are conceived. It's
Yep.
the metabolic process, right? And I love Aubrey de Grey was saying, because longevity is simply it's the byproduct of being healthy. That's all longevity is. It's an expression of health. And so I love that we're putting terms on these things, that happen naturally from a standardized lens of acceptance, because that just gives us more of an opportunity to come out and bring these protocols to the masses, to the mainstream in a democratized type of way that's going to really radically change how we human, right? How we do this human experience in these bodies.
Yes. Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
that's great.
Agreed. I think it's a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
And that's what people don't understand is, they'll go with one specific thing, and it really isn't that. It's more of combining multiple different modalities, multiple disciplines. And actually, one of the keys is actually what I just said is just the word discipline, is having the discipline to actually do these things to make yourself healthy. Because people make a really, really bad choice somewhat, I mean, almost daily. A lot of people, the majority of the masses make bad choices daily, not understanding when, it's okay. You can cheat. You can have that slice of pizza. But if you know that you had three slices of pizza and you felt sick, why do you revert back to that on a consistent base? And that requires discipline. And not understanding what happens when you consume those three slices. That's a different story because I do understand what goes on.
Do you think that part of that solution is more education? Like, I'm just curious, this is just again opinion, philosophical. Do you believe that if we know better, we do better, and people are just kind of missing some of the fundamental education? Or have you found that, look, we can take the horse to water, but it doesn't mean they're going to drink. We can educate them all day long, but we're still out there having that free will and making bad choices, good choices, and everywhere in between. What's your opinion on that?
It's two different things. It's one is educating is important, but bringing education to the forefront on understanding not only what transpires with your gut, following you eating those three slices of pizza, but what transpires in your immune system, the other effects, the secondary effects of it that cause a lot more detriment, versus just a gut. And the other aspect of it is the consistent temptation that's happening out there, when they're throwing inexpensive things at you that are horrific for you, making those, it's once again, it goes down to education, making those educated, decisions and not giving in to temptation, which we go back to discipline.
Okay, so I'm going to jump ahead for a moment and then I'm going to come back to a question I really want to ask you. But with this idea of temptation and there is the growing, never-ending temptation at us. We just pick up our phone and we can order anything we want in a click of a button, right? It's immediate gratification. And of course, we know from a neurotransmitter standpoint, we're constantly getting dopamine hits to have what we want. So we are rewarded for saying, I want the thing and I'm going to have the thing. And I'm not really worried about the consequences because I get the reward the moment I let myself have the thing. So, understanding that we're kind of right now set up almost to fail, to lack discipline, can stem cells potentially be part of a future where even if we aren't as disciplined and we make some bad choices, do we have the hope of some regenerative therapies that will kind of give us that competitive edge against ourself, so to speak?
That'll help you cheat is the
Well, not
question.
necessarily, but I mean, like, look, unfortunately,
Well,
the game is rigged right now. Like, if we think that the deck is stacked against us, and we can sit here and talk about why, right? It's a big money-making machine. Everybody that's gaining out there by continuing to serve us the stuff and not support cleaner alternatives. And of course, hopefully, the new administration will be a big proponent of that. And yet, if we come from the standpoint of going, well, life's a little rigged, it's a little stacked, so we got to be extra disciplined,
yeah.
extra focused, extra, committed to this. And if we're doing our best, and some days we're better than others, is there hope or are we all screwed? Could stem cells help us, or is it not really going to move the needle that much?
Cell therapy. So I go into more of the sector now of cell therapies in general. It can help, but ideally, it's not going to help as much as you would want, or let's say as long as you would like, because it's going to give you a temporary effect. The crazy thing about it is that these things they're not cheap. And what we consistently see is that individuals that decide to make that plunge and invest in their health when they do it, they see a sort of a mental change in attitude of what they need to do, and understanding how they can help the cells because it's not a fix all, it's not a cure all. It's a significant help. It modifies the immune system. It can help regulate the immune system a lot more, which the two keys to longevity for me are essentially the immune system and the vasculature, the blood flow.
Yep.
Those are the two keys. And then one other thing that we can talk about a little bit was you have to remove senescence. There's nothing more important to that. And there's methods to do that now. So if you look at the two aspects of what cell therapy, stem cell therapies do is actually increase blood flow and control the immune system. It'll help temporarily, but if you're consistently throwing some massive darts at it, like really, really bad food on a consistent basis, you're going to be chronically inflamed and you're going to cause the cell therapy not to last as long as it should last. When if you were smart about it and you knew that you invested in your health and you thought of all the little tiny things that anybody out there can do, which are so many little different things that you can do to maintain health that do not cost you. People are like, oh, this stuff is for rich people. There's a lot of things you can do that'll change your mindset, that'll change your health on a daily basis, and it
I
doesn't
love
cost you a
it.
dime.
We're going to talk the freemium all the way to the premium on our conversation today. So let's go ahead while we do have many experts and deep enthusiasts that are well versed in this field. We've got a lot of newbies. A lot of people are getting really excited about this conversation. So let's just kind of go back for a moment and lay some basic groundwork. Help our listening audience better appreciate and understand What is a stem cell and why does it play such a crucial role in regenerative and longevity medicine?
Got it. We'll go with the basic of the cell, which is a basic functional unit of life. There's trillions of them in your body. And every cell, the neat thing about it is that every cell in your body does one thing. It strives to survive. Even when you pull a cell out of the body, which I'm a cell biologist, scientist by trade, even when you pull one out of the body and you look at it underneath the microscope and you put many others, it does one thing. It wants to look happy, feel happy, and maintain health, what's called homeostasis. So it's one of the key aspects of longevity. Now, if you think of all the cells that you have in your body. And if you think of that one mother cell, it's a stem cell. There's different types of stem cells. One is a hemopoietic or a blood stem cell, and one is the other one of the key ones that we work with a lot is called a mesenchymal stem cell. And these form different cell types. They have the capacity, they're very naive, and they have the capacity to form different units or different cells in our body. Many of the works of cell therapies is just like every cell in the body where it requires a signal. Simple example of it, and these are bioactive molecules. They're called exosomes. It's one of the new hot things. We're actually working on that too quite a bit. And think of the simple thing of the pituitary gland is like the master gland for hormones, and long distance communication on a man to go all the way for production of testosterone, all the way down to the testes. That's long distance communication. It's a protective bioactive molecule that forces that to transpire. And every cell in the body does that. However, the stem cells do it 100-fold better. And they decide on releasing healing cues, regenerative cues, and signaling to other cells that I need your help to heal. I need you to make a change. Another thing is I go in a body, a stem cell can go in a body, and it can see the area, the niche that it's in, and it could then say, okay, the only way I'm going to survive is my machinery inside the cell. I need to produce the lack of this protein. Otherwise, I'm not going to survive very long. So it's
Yeah.
it's it's neat what stem cells can do. It's sort of like a twofold. The cell could start to produce what's necessary, and what it produces is sort of like a power pill.
And on that, we already naturally produce these. So let's talk about why do we need to boost them and can we only boost them exogenously?
It's a fantastic question because people talk about you can boost them, but there's a difference between boosting and the most important aspect, which is activating them. Uh,
Thank you.
they
Yes.
they have to be active. For instance, there's many studies that show individuals with heart failure, heart disease, and with neurodegenerative disease, believe it or not, they have more circulating stem cells than a healthy individual would have. And what is the problem there is that they are not active. So you can take a supplement that you think is going to boost your stem cells or something that's out there that says that it boosts your stem cells. But if they're not becoming active and doing what they need to do, then essentially you're losing a battle. What you want to do is getting them to be, to be active.
And that's what we want to know. Talk to us, Doc. Give us the good insight.
So there's scientifically proven some of the only things that cause activation of stem cells is exercise. Um, for instance, polyphenols work fantastic, which are green teas, things like this, can help. There's not that much evidence that it boosts them that much. That's why we talk about what we do is called the cell replacement strategy. It's when you take stem cells and they're outside the body, and then you introduce them from outside the body into the body. Because these cells already come preemptively loaded or made with activation cues of what they
Ah.
want to do. That's a difference there. Those are activation cues. Now, if you think of what happens many times with aging is there's individuals, and you can look this up, you'll see that actually die of what's called stem cell exhaustion. Because remember, every single cell in your body only has a finite amount of divisions. And when those divisions stop, when you stop dividing cells, this is actually called senescence or a zombie cell that's in your body. I mean, we've been studying this for 14 years now and have ways to eliminate it in your body with a particular immune cell. What basically happens is you have to replace. Longevity is going to require at some juncture that you replace cells so they can function correctly.
Okay, so I like this. So I'm going to put a few pieces together. This is such a beautiful conversation. Thank you. So we naturally have these stem cells. We can boost them, but it doesn't mean that they're going to be actively doing the job they're supposed to be doing. There's only a few ways that we may be able to boost them, exercise being one of the most important. And that's one of those freemium tips, you guys. And we'll kind of dig into the types of exercise if one is better than another here in a moment. Yet, one of the other components that you said that's really important when we come from this conversation around longevity is we have to look at the senescent cell burden. And so if all of a sudden, there's stem cell exhaustion, okay, we're not making as many the longer we go chronologically, and or it's harder and harder to make them. We need some outside sources. But even if we're bringing them in, if we're bringing them into a really chaotic environment, one that's the terms that we hear a lot, right, in the from the hallmarks of aging is that inflammaging. We've got a lot of cellular senescent burden. So again, that's just a simple way to think about there's a lot of noise in the system. There's a lot taking up that space. And so let's talk for a moment about the competition, if you will, between senescent cells versus maybe active stem cells coming in and why it is so important. Have you seen clinically a difference in removing senescent cells before bringing in active stem cells as part of your protocols versus they can both coexist? I'm curious on kind of your clinical approach of how you look at these different cells and what they need and kind of in the system.
You're 100% spot on with what you suggested earlier, which is essentially what you want to do is you want to eliminate or remove as much of the senescence as possible before you bring something regenerative, something that can make changes in. If you think of the body basically has a set amount of cells in the body. The simple things like, how's that, possible? Think about on a daily basis, over 300 billion cells turn over just in your vasculature by natural cell death. The concept is because it wants to try to eliminate senescence as much as possible. When senescence is eliminated in the body, for instance, in the blood vasculature, the bone marrow has to now produce new progeny, young progeny, correct progeny, so it can regenerate and do what it wants to do. But if you leave senescence in, and the process as you age doesn't work correctly of this turnover, what transpires is senescence now, just like we talked about that fantastic signaling of hormones, of other cell types, guess what? These senescent cells also have signaling, and they also cause detriment, and they also mess up other cells that are surrounding the area.
Yeah.
So if you throw something clean and fantastic at something that's dirty, you're going to get muddied waters.
Mhm.
Versus if you clean the system and you go in with a fresh slate or a cleaner slate, or at least lower that mud, you now have a better chance of living longer, living better, and doing the right things, especially in the context of the immune system, because every single disease has an immune component to it. We now know every single one does.
The longevity revolution is about more than just searching online for a few hacks, or any one of us moving our biomarkers in the right direction. It's about coming together to learn, share, to connect, and create the unlimited future we want. That's why you need to be at RAADfest 2025 in Las Vegas from July 10th to the 13th. RAADfest, the revolution against aging and death, is proud to be partnering for the first time with Dr. Aubrey de Grey and Longevity Escape Velocity Foundation to form the single most comprehensive, advanced, informative, and inspiring event on age reversal for a general audience. Meet the people you want to make forever with. RAADfest 2025. Take advantage of lower advanced pricing now at radfest.com.
Completely. So let me ask you this, your favorite approaches to and okay, so your favorite approaches to reducing, removing senescent burden, and is this something that you like to cycle through? Are you taking a more kind of, hey, little bits through lifestyle, or are you looking at, we're going to come in and use the clinical, we're going to go big. And then what's your approach? What are your thoughts on how you best like to handle senescent cells?
All of it at once. We'd have to take into an explanation of doing the baby stuff.
Yeah.
Much of the baby stuff, just like fasting, depending on what type of individual you are, what type of fasting you do. Reaching cleanup. Cleanup is not necessarily equivalent to removal of senescence, but going into autophagy, removing a lot of the free radicals, the oxidative stress that's actually there, so you can lower the senescent burden. That helps lower the senescent burden more indirectly. And then at the same time doing the cleanup. And the cleanup, unfortunately, requires another cell replacement therapy, is the only one that we've shown that actually works, which is a particular cell in your body. It's called the natural killer cell. It's a first responder to three different things, which are three different things that people take, we don't take it for granted. But number one is a mutated cell, cancerous cell. That's why as you age, you're more prone to get cancers, because the natural killer cell is no longer a killer. It becomes what we call sort of like a dormant office worker or a light signaler in the system. Number two is a virally loaded cell. That's a complete different conversation with all the viruses. And you're seeing your own patients being challenged with, once they got hit with COVID, what's another virus, co-infections, they get chronic fatigue syndrome. They have this long haulers. It's because the NK cell, believe it or not, is not functioning correctly and eliminating and doing what it needs to do. And individuals get what's called an exhausted immune system. And lastly is the removal and the elimination of that senescent cell. So it's in charge of three different things, that senescent cells. So we can take blood from somebody, we can isolate their NK cells, we can activate them to a younger state, proliferate them, throw them back in. We published a paper in 2022 that shows you that you can remove immunosenescence. What does that do for me? It basically gives your immune system a much stronger fighting chance, because not only can you remove immunosenescence, you can remove mutated cells, and you can also remove a virally loaded cell that's challenging your system. So it's a threefold approach.
That's really fantastic. I love that. That's like for the most, when we're really in a compromised position, that those are the big guns. We completely want that. Now I'm curious, if we go upstream just a notch, what's your thought on where just thymic involution and really supporting healthy thymic function by way of peptides, or taking an approach like that to also kind of help to boost proper natural killer cells and just kind of the two sides of the immune system. What are your opinions on that?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, if you look at the thymus, you're going to look at, if you keep it, maintain it well, and you do the right things with it, you're essentially going to balance the immune system.
Yeah.
The challenge that happens as you age, I mean, I published an article in 2015 on inflammation and using regenerative medicine, one of the first of its kind. And if you look at what happens is you're stuck with that chronic, basically inflammatory response, and you have no healing response. But sort of to the opposite of that, I mean, I've gone a lot into cancer therapeutics now with the dendritic cell vaccine, some other neat things that are out there that are all natural things that you can actually do for individuals, unfortunately, that have cancer. Is we now know that unfortunately, chronic inflammation in some instances is actually not really bad, because if you look at cancer patients that have high viral titers, they don't have an immune system. They have no chronic inflammatory response. They have no inflammation. And they have more of a healing response, which is called the Th2 anti-inflammatory healing response. And you can measure this I mean, you measure these individuals, you'll see that they have high viral titers of Epstein-Barr virus, and they'll have high titers of TGF-beta. And that's how you know that they're somewhat not mounting the correct immune response. So the key here is having the correct balance, which is that regulatory T cell, which is actually, thymic health in general is what helps with that. It's keeping that balance in check. And if you look at studies on centenarians, they all have a clear balance of that pro-inflammatory response, that anti-inflammatory response, that regulatory response is the key to longevity, to maintaining that with the immune system and maintaining health.
Yes, I agree 100%. Thank you for stating that. And one of the interesting things, that I think is actually missed, especially whether it's to the consumer or to the clinician, is we talk so much about senescence, and really from a longevity standpoint, that senescent burden that can continue to grow and grow over time. How we're like, we have to remove those senescent cells. But let us step back for a moment. You just brought up an important point about cancer. There is a time when senescence is serving a very important role, especially in a cancer process. So you share a little clinical insight. Like, we need to remember, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. These are not kind of all black and whites, but it's understanding the nuances, the science and the art of the body does things for a reason. It's just when things get really kind of wacky that we've got to clean up and look for where it needs support. So how would you kind of offer some insight and some recommendations on that?
Yeah, I mean, years and years ago, it was thought that senescence is the body's natural ability to basically stop cancer, stop the burden. Now there's evidence now that senescence in the body, unfortunately, actually causes a burden that causes cancer. There's a lot of evidence on that.
Bidirectionally,
But
yeah.
yeah, but there has to be a clear balance with there has to be some senescence in the body. There has to be a stop mechanism, for instance, when the mutation comes. But ultimately, for me, it goes back to one important thing is the immune system has to be spot on. Because
Yeah.
what removes and eliminates it on a daily basis a mutated cell is the immune system. And it's got to be it's sort of like a co-work, a one-two work of the immune system and vasculature. Because unfortunately, as we age, flow everywhere in the body starts to become occluded. That's why we have strokes. That's why we have heart attacks. And then we don't get the right oxygenation. Nitric oxide production is not correct in the body. I mean, there's so many little things on a daily basis that anybody can do. I mean, I have my 84-year-old mom doing this, and it's like night and day. It's been years since my mom called me with telling me, um, I feel bad, I feel sick, I don't feel well. There might be some bad days, but she at minimum knows to start off her day with go outside right when you wake up, go look at the sun, even if the sun's not out, just spend some time out there, spend time on a daily basis taking breathing exercise. I need you to ground your feet for at least 30 minutes, 40 minutes if you're not going to use other modalities like PEMF. These simple things can be the simple game changer of what was thought as a placebo before
Right.
that can make a massive change in your immune system too. I mean, getting the vitamin D, getting the right exposure to it. Maybe you don't absorb it the correctly. Well, then guess what? You need to supplement.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, there's so much that just grounding alone, there's a lot that we could talk about and go into. So we often overlook what we assume to be too simple. And I like to remind everybody we are nature, right? Like we are nature. The human system is a living biodynamic expression, just like nature is. So we can glean a lot from that wisdom. And I think the time that we sit in, of course, we get so excited about super longevity, radical life extension. And I have to invite us all to remember like, wait a minute, I want to live a long time, but am I living my best today already? And so let us begin in the moment to appreciate some of the very simple things. Are you looking at morning sunlight? Are you getting that good sleep? Because to your point, Doc, these are also very anti-inflammatory. These are processes that do help to naturally modulate that immune system by way of really how it's governing that autonomic nervous system, how it's giving us an opportunity to kind of, I always call it pumping the brakes on fight or flight, getting us out of that a constant sympathetic over arousal dominance and taking us into that that so from fight or flight to kind of rest, digest, connect, that relaxation state where healing occurs, recovery occurs, and that's the only place where rejuvenation is going to occur as well. So we're bringing down all those pro-inflammatory hormones, right? We're helping to increase really what's just really supporting amazing immune modulation and function. So yes, to all of the good lifestyle practices. Let us do those first. Do those first. So, for those of us that are doing those things, let's kind of start there. I'm excited. I want you to take us into, let's jump into the work you're doing right now because you have a lot of published research out there. Tell me what you're most excited on that you're working, that most excited about that you're working on right now, and how you feel that's what implications that has towards longevity and just kind of the future of health and well-being.
Cell replacement strategies. We have multiple clinical studies here in the United States in autoimmune disease. Our company's focus is restoring the immune system to a younger state. But my most exciting thing is working on these natural killer cells and the inherent ability that they have to do so much because they are truly a game changer. They deal directly, they're somewhat of the first responders, with all these three things we talked about, but they also play a really, really important role with the remainder of your full army in the immune system, T cells and the B cells, and activating them and keeping them healthy and making sure that they're mounting the correct responses, which is one of the most important things. And even using these exosomes and these signaling cues from them are something that I'm beyond excited about, because unfortunately we're plagued with so many different things that natural killer cells are not functioning correctly, melanoma on skin, senescence of skin. There's so many different things that they can help in, and it's just a matter of getting that direct target, getting them to work the right way, getting them specifically to target specific things
Yeah.
versus mounting a bad response, which they already knows what called self-recognition. They know
Mhm.
if they're going to try to attack something that's good in our body and they just back off. They do it by an inhibition of the other cells that are there. So they know what to attack, what not to attack. But in my science world, it's ideal that I'm going to take some NK cells and we're modifying them and we're going to get them to attack specific things, only attack specific things, instead of going into a system that's burdened with many things, with virus, senescence, and
Yeah.
cancer, that is just throwing a shotgun out there. We're going more towards, the science is heading more towards directed approaches towards removing these things that help in the context of everything longevity. And more importantly, you and I know is you can live to 90 years old, but if your life is not good and you don't have a health span, for me personally, if I can't continue to educate, if I can't continue to exercise, I mean, my life is, I love exercising. It's
Yeah.
the key to relieve stress for me on a daily basis. I can be exhausted and go to the gym and the stress just goes out the door. It's for me, it's one of the longevity plays, more than any other.
Yeah.
It works so phenomenally well because it gives you that opportunity to basically disconnect and
Yeah.
increase your blood flow, let oxygen go to vital organs, this type of thing.
Are you ready to redefine aging and unlock your full potential as a longevity leader? At the Human Longevity Institute, our world class certification programs train doctors, coaches, and wellness professionals how to deliver cutting edge integrative longevity health solutions so people can live better today for longer, healthier, and more vibrant tomorrows. If you're ready to join the longevity revolution, visit humanlongevityinstitute.com to enroll and become a practitioner today. Well, and that kind of circles back to one of the things you said in the beginning, that one of the most important elements really to longevity is, again, just really looking at circulation, like blood flow, like what is happening. And as we chronologically age, some of the biggest disease states that we're dealing with is really a direct effect of lack of flow in our systems, of getting things where they need to go. And of course, exercise is a beautiful way to help to continue to keep things circulating, to keep things in a much healthier and youthful state. So we say exercise is medicine, and it really is. And I'm curious. So we're sitting at this kind of interesting, tipping point. And last week, as I was sitting down with Aubrey de Grey, and he was, of course, he's been out there sharing for well over 20 years his concept of longevity escape velocity, and understanding that, this process can come where we can, first it was slow down, but hey, if we can start to reverse, like we can rejuvenate the system, kind of have that for every year we're going forward, if we can go backwards a year, 2 years, right? And now he's saying more of a 20-year stretch, but he's really talking about a lot of the regenerative therapies coming out that will almost give us this 20-year, like we can have these big spreads of how the system can be reset in essence, and what that could potentially do, just like this, in radically extending lifespan.
Mhm.
This past weekend, as we said, we were at A4M together, and Dr. David Sinclair was there sharing all of his work that he does on cellular reprogramming. I'm curious in a couple of things. I want to ask a few things from you. First, do you see, will cellular reprogramming almost be the main switchboard? Do other things become more obsolete if we can go right kind of to the code and the signalers that way? Do you still see it's a stacked approach of multiple modalities, multiple regenerative therapies? Let's start there first, and then I want to ask another, coming back to kind of this concept around longevity escape velocity. So we've got these therapies, we're at this tipping point. Is cellular reprogramming going to be the big thing that's going to kind of take us to longevity escape velocity? Is it the natural killer cells and stem cells, more of this regenerative? Is it a combination of both? What's your opinion from what you're seeing in the science around where we're headed with this?
It's going to be a combination of many. And the simple reason is because if you think of all the different cells that you have in your body, if you reprogram one cell, you're not going to be able to reprogram all the different ones. Take, for instance, the kidney. The kidney consists of multiple different types of epithelial cells that have multiple different functions. You'd have to find a way to reprogram the kidney function. You'd have to be able to reprogram the vascular function. You'd have to be able to, reprogram muscular function. a little bit of everything. So that's not that straightforward. It's going to require, my honest opinion is requiring removal of senescence, reprogramming of cells, or editing of cells at
Yeah.
some juncture. Yeah, it's going to require probably doing those basic two things because no matter what, as you age, you still have a buildup of senescence. If you don't remove that, you're going to have a hard time with the reprogramming. Maybe if you reprogram the immune system to eliminate the majority of it, but
Mhm.
removing immunosenescence is not removing senescence from the lung or the liver because the liver, I mean, excuse me, the lung has fibrotic tissue, fibrosis of the lung is actually, and it happens as you age, it just builds up with time, is essentially a senescent cell. Cirrhosis of the liver, fatty liver disease is senescence of the cell, of a cell, but they're in different organ systems. So there's got to be that's much further along. But I think throwing multiple modalities at it, it's a stepwise process.
Mhm.
Um, is going to do a significant change in health span. I always talk about the context of I'd rather die. I'd actually rather die at 80 or 90 that I died instantly versus me having to suffer for too long and living to 100 because I want to enjoy life. I want to have time with my family, and I want to be able to continue to play with my grandkids, my great grandkids, and if I'm fortunate enough, my great great grandkids.
Now, I know that when we come from the field of science and we're looking at the data and we're looking at, when I say the data, it's okay, where are we at with health span? Where are we at with lifespan? Where are we at with life expectancy? So we're kind of looking at the data sets. We're looking at the current patient population. We're looking at the expression of health, which is really, it's not the current expression, it's the buildup of everything that's been before. So my first question to you is, do you believe, and I appreciate we have to be a little conservative, but is there any part of you that, like, what do you believe is possible for us right now as far as lifespan goes? All the pandemics and all the things aside, just looking and thinking, we've got these really interesting therapies coming, more and more breakthroughs every day. Like you said at the beginning of our conversation, things are happening at a much quicker pace, and it's almost surprising how quick things are going. So imagine where we're going to be in another 2 years with the way that AI is coming in and really making such a big impact in how we're, running clinical studies and practices and things of that nature. What do you believe? Do you think it's still 100? Most of us, if we can get to 100 with a good health span, we're winning, or do you believe more is possible for us?
I think more is possible for us. I think within the next 5 years, there's going to be some significant changes that are going to transpire that are going to make somewhat of like an individual living to 120 a large possibility, really, and actually a lot more people. And the more we're learning about, diet, the more we're forcing changes as educators in the way, especially in the United States, the way we're consuming food. Um, it's going to be a game changer. I mean, if you look at the one proven thing in telomerase, telomere biology is caloric restriction.
Yeah.
Guys, I mean, stop eating, or at least do it once a week. Just stop eating, make some time to stop eating, because what you don't understand, it's as simple as we just talked about this. You have a certain amount of cell divisions in your body. When you consume too much, metabolic function has to go on overdrive. The whole body has to go on overdrive. Cells have to divide to process all this, to process all the toxins, especially the nonsense that we're being fed.
Yeah.
If you're not eating right, and you're just limiting your life because you're turning cells over. When you take that step back and become quiescent, when your cells have to say, okay, I'm in a mode of I need to slow down. It's like they're taking that break that all of us love to do in the morning, right before we go out. They
Oh,
won't
yeah.
divide. You feel great. They don't divide. They think about it. They look at each other. We're feeling great. We're in a good place. And we're not divided and we're not burdened. That's what needs to happen at some juncture. And everybody has to find a balance to be able to have that so they can live that health span.
That feels so good. Just hearing you say that. And I would advise people, it's not about going and doing radical intermittent fasting interventions yet. It's always for what reason. There's a lot of ways to fast. That's just going an extended period of time without consuming food. And there's a lot of benefit depending on how frequently you're eating right now, that if you can just go, like, I'm a big proponent, Doc, and you mentioned it even with your 80-year-old mom getting up, viewing that morning sunlight. I'm a huge proponent around circadian fasting. So, really living in the rhythms, the light dark cycles, the chronobiology. There's so much incredible research out there. Eat during the light phase, fast during the dark phase. If you're thinking even just from the time I go to bed to the time I wake up, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., 12 hours. Just can you even go 12 hours to give a little silence in the system? If you haven't started there yet, that can, in and of itself, be a radical reset. And the way you just said that, it's like I think we could all just feel that, like, oh yeah, that time, the time before it all gets busy and hurried and crazy and overloaded, where the system just kind of feels, your cells feel that. And when you said when you take them out and you put them in a petri dish, like a cell just wants to be happy, right? It wants to
Just
keep
wants to be
going. It's
happy.
like it's
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 just, yep,
seeking the very same thing we are. And I think that's beautiful the way you've said that.
yeah.
I really thank you for that. So I mean, gosh, I'm just loving this right now. If somebody wants to start to incorporate some of these cellular therapies, these regenerative therapies, where would you suggest they begin?
Number one is do your diligence. I'm not saying that, we have a phenomenal program. We have we've had years. I published a paper in 2010 looking at what we think is probably one of the best stem cells that are out there. They're called umbilical cord lining stem cells. We spend years, and number one thing about ours is we looked at genetics. Everybody's worried about genetics in the cell lines that we produce. Diet was key to get to where we are because we looked at telomeres and telomerase activity in our cells. And believe it or not, our cells are grown in a ketogenic diet, protein restricted ketogenic diet that slows down, their metabolism significantly on them, that they can maintain youth. We have evidence they maintain youth versus feeding them constant sugar-based system, which is pretty constant in my field. We do high glucose protein formulations because we want cell turnover, but
Yeah,
that's not what we want to put into a body. So
right.
it's I would tell you to do your diligence on whatever you decide to do in cell therapies. There's many places out there that do this. Make sure the cells are studied right. You look at the genetics aspect of it, of what you're putting in your body, and then reach out, of course, more importantly, to others that have had something done. I think it's important to get others' opinions.
I mean, this could be an entire conversation, just the last sentence you just said. So it is confusing, both for a clinician that's not well versed in stem cells, especially for the consumer thinking, "Oh my gosh, I want this. I'm hearing this. I'm excited about this. I get it. It makes a lot of logical sense." Yet there are so many things that we would not know to ask. So, what would be some of the things that we want to avoid? So, you just brought up a really good point about how it's fed. Like what are the nutrients it's giving? Never would have thought of that. One of the big points of discussion right now is we're looking even at blood banks, like has depending on if there's a spike protein or there's not by way of a vaccination, or there's a lot of different things that people are taking into consideration. And the more and more and more we go into cell therapies and regenerative therapies, just maybe give us the top three things that we really do want to consider. So if it's food source, if it's genetics, what specifically about genetics, like give us a little bit more detail on
So
this if you're willing.
absolutely. So not all stem cells are created equal. Number one, it depends on where it is. The younger the source, the better. That's number one. Number two, if it's something that's directly obtained from a birth, what you have to consider is you and I are completely different. Every baby that's born is completely different. We've studied this before. If it's something that can't be consistent, meaning the product is consistently produced in large amounts, you really don't know what you're getting because if you took post-birth tissue, let's say cord blood, and you're normally going to probably obtain 1 billion of these stem cells that are in there, or cells, first of all, they're not pure stem cells. The difference is what we do is we expand, grow a pure stem cell population.
Yeah.
And there's consistency from lot to lot. We're producing billions, 14 billion at a time, 20 billion at a time with full testing, full safety profiling, looking at that. Looking at that is number one. Looking at, unfortunately, the donors. I mean, what type of viral burden, what type of et cetera did they have? A lot of people talk about, oh, I'm using this amniotic fluid product. I don't know for what. But you have to look at what you're getting because there's a ton of antibodies in there. One of the things that you said, that spike protein that we now know is an issue that everybody argued for years. No, it's not an issue. Yes, it is an issue. Some of these things have to be looked at, and at minimum, asking for a certificate of analysis of where it came from, what type of testing was done on it. Does this follow, the FDA is there for a reason to actually make sure that you're protected, that you don't get sick. There's been cases of many people getting sick, causing issues. You don't get sick, that it's safe. And once again, I go back to talking to others that have had this procedure done with that same product. Was it successful? What did it do? I mean, if you go online, you can find almost anything on these type of things, depending on what it is. But it's probably the keys is the health certificate that comes with the product and the donors. And is it a pure stem cell product, which that's actually not allowed here in the United States. So that's why people go ex-US on all this kind of stuff, because these are culture expanded. And what am I looking to benefit from it? Because if somebody tells you, this is probably the most important thing, if somebody tells you you're going to be cured of something, be very worried, because you're not. It is not a cure. There is no cures with stem cells at all. There's cures if they talk about cures of cancer. This is more like called no evidence of disease. This is following getting chemo and removing your blood system to repopulate your own immune system. This is a different type of stem cell. But in the context of stem cell, besides that, there really is no cures. It's a change in the quality of life.
Yeah.
For instance, treating a joint, treating a vascular issue, treating something like we just said. It's a treatment. We've done autoimmune diseases. We're going into a phase 2, 3 for a really bad autoimmune disease. And what we're seeing is that it requires infusion about every 4 to 6 months. So we're timing it for the phase 2, 3 at every 4 months.
Yeah.
That we do this to maintain health. Let me tell you, I prefer to do one of these that's completely natural than have to be on any form of biologic that's suppressing my immune system. That's going to eventually cause exactly those commercials that you see out there, cancer, infections, et cetera, et cetera. The list is massively long. I mean, it's pretty bad.
Yeah, and again, man, we could just continue to have such a beautiful conversation. I would say to anybody listening, to our experts, enthusiasts alike, one of the things that maybe we overlook or we haven't been aware of enough of is that we're providing educational and inspirational, factual, research-based information here in these conversations, and yet one size does not fit most, meaning we are living in a time of true precision, personalized longevity medicine. And what does that mean to us as individuals? We are all bio-individual. We are all different. We live in different environments. We live in different, from the time of how we sleep, light exposure we're getting, relationships we're in, toxic burdens. There's so many different things. The quality of the soil that we step on. Are we in the city? Are we in the country? There's so many different elements that are constantly sending information from the outer world into the inner world. And that's informing and influencing the overall expression or repression of our health and vitality. And so, as clinicians, and we teach this a lot at Human Longevity Institute to our practitioners, is how do we appreciate, is it mild, moderate, severe, and complexity? So if you're sitting here trying to take this and go, what do I do with all this? We can always strip back and say, wait, let's go to those freemium things. There are some beautiful, simple things that are already going to move the needle in decreasing, let's just say, the stress, the demands on the system. And we can do a little less of the things that overload us and a little more of the things that support us. That's already going to hedge us in the right direction to slow down the pace of biological aging. Because if we can slow down that stress burden, we're already going to take a little load off the body. Even some intermittent fasting, even starting with a 12-hour window, getting up and walking every day, viewing that morning sunlight, little simple things. Yet I do believe what I'm excited about is understanding we have these phenomenal regenerative therapies and breakthroughs that are just getting more precise and refined every day. So hopefully what you're hearing is that really to create your optimized longevity life plan, it's about stacking. It's the little things I call the small hinges that swing the big door. So it is the little lifestyle habitual choices that we do and don't do, back to discipline in the very beginning, Doc. And then it's understanding we're going to layer things in. It's no longer let's just turn things off and put some tape over the red light. It's like we don't want to do that
Yeah,
anymore. Medicine is evolving. We are changing as practitioners. We know better. We do better. And it's just so beautiful to know that your work is out there really helping to lead the way. I want to thank you for all this today. But I do want to end with a few rapid fire questions. If you'll engage me for just a couple more minutes, can we do
absolutely.
it? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So give us your most memorable life lesson.
Wow. Okay. If I help one person, I've helped a million.
Oh, that just hit me in my heart. That is beautiful.
Yeah.
If you could travel to any point in the future, when would it be?
30 years from now to see where my kids are at.
I love that. I know all of us that are parents are like, yes, I can say
Yep.
yes to that. What's one thing that you would personally like everybody to start doing for their improved, better health today for a longer life tomorrow?
If you have to wake up 10 minutes earlier, wake up 10 minutes earlier so you can prep for your day, take time for your day. And even if it's cold outside, I don't care. The cold is going to wake you up. Go out there, look up in the sky. It doesn't matter if there's no sun, it's going to impact your life. You're going to start off your day so much better.
Take us out with your longevity living vision. Kind of what does longevity living really look like for you?
Being able to continue to exercise on a daily basis, being able to articulate everything that I love to do, being able to engage in individuals with some like you. And one of the important things I talk about, for instance, yesterday alone, I learned about, the true, like one of the true meanings of the candy cane, of why the colors, why the shape, all of that, and learning something on a daily basis because I showed my kids. I was like, look what I learned today. And they're like, what's the big deal? I said, it's a big deal. It's what I learned today. I learned something new. It's always an honor to learn something new.
Oh, wow. It has been an honor to learn with you today. Thank you so much, Dr.
Likewise. Thank
Gonzalez.
you.
This has been incredible.
Pleasure.
Where would you like people to go find out? We're going to put links in the show notes, so there's going to be multiple, but where I know people want to know more about you and being able to potentially work with you and your team for some of these regenerative stem cell and cellular therapy treatments, where should they find you?
They can go to R Gonzalez, RGONZALEZ at restem, RESTEM.com. They can also see me. I believe my Instagram is Rafael Gonzalez, PhD.
You just got his email. I mean, like, yo, Doc, you
There we
sure you
go.
want us to
Sorry.
put that in there?
Well, that's my Instagram, but you got my email. You
Your
can put it
Instagram.
on there
Okay,
a
okay,
hundred
okay.
percent. I'm willing to help whoever I can. Exactly what I told you is true to me. Is I get reached out by the most unusual cases, and they all know. I tell them I can give you 5 minutes, 10 minutes. If I can help you, I can. If I can't help you, I'll refer you to somebody that probably can help you.
A man after my own heart. Thank you for this. Well, follow him, get all the links below, go follow him on social. You definitely want to continue to listen to this amazing luminary out there. Thank you for your ongoing research. You are bettering
Thank
humanity
you.
and all of us. So, what a
Trying my
pleasure.
best.
All
Honor,
right.
pleasure.
Wow,
Thank you.
gang. Isn't this amazing? Keep listening. More beautiful conversations coming week after week. So go out there, stay curious, stay bold, and continue to express your greatest states of aliveness. Thank you for joining us on RAADcast, where science and soul ignite the future of radical life extension. Be sure to visit us over at radfest.com. There you can engage with like minds in the super longevity movement and find out about upcoming conferences and events. If you're inspired by today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who's ready to live bigger, bolder, and longer. Stay curious, and we'll see you next time on RAADcast.